Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 662. 662, January the 14th, 2019, Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, let's talk about what everybody's talking about, for good reason. It's that telephone interview that Trump did with Judge Jeanine on Saturday night. Probably the most, I don't know what the word is to describe it, but it's the most hard-hitting, I guess, that we've heard Trump get into, specifically on Spygate, the characters in Spygate, and all these other things that are going on. Very definitive things that he said, because we're used to him tweeting out, saying, oh, you know, these corrupt people, the FBI and DOJ, they should be investigated, Mueller's doing a witch hunt. We're familiar with all that kind of stuff. But what he did with Judge Jeanine on Saturday night was he got very specific, and he made specific claims and forecasts, predictions. Not really even predictions, you know, because normally he'll say something like, well, let's see what happens, or, you know, they should be brought to justice, or maybe they'll be brought to justice, or what Sessions doing, or whatever. That's not what he did with Judge Jeanine on Saturday night. With Judge Jeanine, he basically said, hey, you are going to see these things. You are going to learn about people you've never heard about before, and the truth is going to come out. Very emphatically and very matter-of-factly, he made these statements to Judge Jeanine. Let's just go through just a couple of the quotes of the things that he said. He said at one point, quote, wait till you see how it all ends up. McCabe, Comey, Page, Strzok, and others I can name, but I better not. We'll make front page news if I do. Wait till you see how it all ends up. So these are very definitive statements. These are not suggesting maybe we'll get to the bottom of this. Maybe the perps will be held accountable. Maybe we'll find out who all is involved. That's not what he's telling Judge Jeanine here. He is saying very matter-of-factly, wait till you see how it all ends up. McCabe, Comey, Page, Strzok, and others I can name, but I better not, because we'll make front page news if I do. In other words, this would be bombshell. And he says, again, wait till you see how it all ends up. That's a very matter-of-fact statement. The most matter-of-fact statement we've seen him make up to at this point. He's not saying maybe. He is saying, wait till you see how it all ends up. In other words, he's signaling that he knows that there must be some sort of process underway by which this is all happening, or he wouldn't make a statement like that. So he's obviously got a plan. He's cooking up something. There's something in the works. Maybe there are grand juries impaneled, and maybe they are taking depositions. Maybe things are going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about, that he does know about. Because these are not suggestions of what he hopes will happen or what may happen. He's saying these things in a very matter-of-fact way. You know, wait till you see how it all ends up. And then he starts talking about McCabe, Comey, Page, Strzok, and others I can name, but I better not. We will make front page news if I do. Who's he talking about? Well, obviously what he's saying is, you've heard all these other names, and I assume we can throw, he didn't mention everybody, but I assume we can mention Comey and Brennan and Clapper and all these guys. All these names we've all heard before. So he may be talking about someone overseas. He may be talking about Theresa May. He may be talking about Boris Johnson. He may be talking about others outside the U.S. But he could also be talking about people inside the U.S. whose names we have not heard, who may have been involved in all of this. And we've got a lot of names. I mean, we have all the people we've covered, all these people for the past almost 2 years. We've talked about a lot of people in the DOJ, in the FBI, in the intelligence community whose names have come up in the Spygate thing. But he's telling us here that these are names that we haven't heard of, is essentially what he's saying. These are new names. And he's saying these names are going to come out. Then Judge Jeanine asked him if he will release the FISA. And she's talking about the Carter Page, 20 pages of the Carter Page FISA document. At which point he says that he may do that at the right time. Then he says, we'll probably do that. And he says also that in regards to the Spygate situation, he says that he's going to put that down as, he says, I'll put that down as one of my greatest achievements. People are going to be exposed that nobody ever thought possible. He's going to put this down as one of his greatest achievements. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us it's something that's important to him, that he considers it an achievement or something that he is striving to do, wanting to do, and working on. It's not pie in the sky. It's not a dream. It's not hoping Whitaker does something, hoping that Barr does something, hoping that someone does something, hoping the media does something, hoping that Congress can do something. That's not what he's saying here. He's saying that he's going to put this down as one of his greatest achievements. This is something he is working on, that he is going to do. Remember, I keep saying that the only way that the deep state coup is going to be revealed fully is if he gets involved. And I think he understands that. He can see that he is going to have to get involved. It doesn't matter who he puts in at the DOJ. As soon as they get into that position, or who he puts at the head of the FBI, no matter who he puts in those positions, they're automatically, almost like they become instantly corrupted. They're unable to act. They don't execute, despite what they've said. So I think it's become obvious to Trump that he is going to have to force the issue, and I do believe when the time is right, he is going to do just that. And like a lot of people, I believe that he thinks that the Mueller investigation must be ended. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that Rodenstein told him that if he declassifies or releases all these documents or does certain things, it could be considered as obstruction. Then that could be given to the Congress or to Uncle Bob, and they could pursue obstruction. And he knows that that would be a big legal battle, and that would muddy up the water and still probably would keep him from getting all the evidence. In order to get the evidence that he needs to make his case, the Mueller investigation must be over, because until it's over, the evidence that he needs is being protected by Mueller. So that's why he really needs Mueller investigation to end, so that now when it's over, then all that evidence will now be available to a new special counsel, or will be available for him to release without the fear of or the threat of obstruction charges and impeachment hearings and lawsuits and things and such. So it's clear that he's got a situation here with time. And this is probably why he's been working so hard and putting so much pressure on Giuliani to force Uncle Bob to shut down his investigation, to finish it. Not so much to shut it down, but to finish it, to wrap it up. You get the feeling that Trump needs for Mueller to have his investigation wrapped up before he can move on these things. And you have to know that Trump knows that he must act on these things before 2020, and certainly well in advance of that. He can't wait till a month before his re-election, because he could lose, or people won't be paying attention because they'll be watching the election. There's a sweet spot here in the time frame that he probably feels will be right to expose these crimes. But he also, I think, feels like Uncle Bob has to be wrapped up with his investigation, or it really creates a lot of problems for what he's going to try to do. And Uncle Bob knows that. The deep state knows that. They know that Trump... See, if Trump's probably got something going behind the scenes, they probably know about it. And they probably have, amongst themselves, say, man, we can't allow Uncle Bob to have his investigation wrapped up, because as soon as he does, Trump is going to lower the boom. So we must keep Uncle Bob in the saddle until Trump is gone, whether that's 2020 or 2024. In the meantime, we'll try to find anything we can. And, her asking him about the FISA, and he says, we may do that at the right time. We'll probably do that. which is classic Trump, the way he answers questions sometimes. Yeah, we'll do it. Well, maybe we'll do it. I probably should do it. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it. He does that all the time, where he will kind of say something that sounds pretty definitive, then he'll immediately, rephrase it to something slightly different. So he leaves you kind of perplexed about, well, wait a minute. He is, or he's thinking about it, or he might, or it will. He leaves you kind of in that sort of confused. You're not really sure. And on one hand, you could say, well, Trump isn't clear about things. His mind's obviously not working very well or whatever. You could look at it that way. But once you get to know Trump, as well as many of us have, watching him, you realize that this is not accidental. He's doing this on purpose. He's purposely doing something like saying, yeah, we may do that at the right time, and we'll probably do that. It's that sort of leaves you hanging. You don't really know where to go with it. So if you're one of his adversaries and you're trying to make sense of what he may be thinking or doing, it makes it very difficult to figure that out, because the way he states things sometimes, where he'll give something definitive, then he'll kind of pull back on it a little bit, then he'll say maybe there's some condition, then maybe he'll say something else, and so you're really confused, like what the hell does he really mean? He knows exactly what he's doing. What he's doing is keeping his opposition off balance, and gives him just enough to make him nervous about what he might do, but doesn't really, make them think that he's actively on it, 100%. It's like, yeah, I'll get around to it. Yeah, I'll declassify. Maybe we'll do that. Probably do that. I don't know. Maybe we'll do it. I'll see. We'll see. He just does that all the time with everything. So it constantly keeps people off balance. You don't really know what to think. And I do think that he does that on purpose. So, yes, it was a very interesting interview with Judge Jeanine, and it was certainly the most specific he's been. It's the most definitive he's been. It's the most descriptive he's been. And it's the most... I don't know what the word is, but we've never really seen him lay it out quite like this, where normally there's some question about it, about what he's got going on or what's going on or what he may do or what may happen. In this particular interview, he was not, wishy-washy at all about any of this, or suggesting stuff may happen, or hoping it would happen, or whatever. In this particular interview, he's saying these things will happen. Wait till you see how it ends up. We're going to be hearing lots of names we've never heard before. Wait till you see how things end up. He repeated that 3 times. And then again, he says people are going to be exposed. He doesn't say, I hope people are going to be exposed. He doesn't say, I believe people are going to be exposed. He says, people are going to be exposed that nobody even thought possible. So he may be talking about Obama in this particular case, because Obama's managed to stay sort of in the background here. It's been Page, Strzok, Comey, McCabe, and all these characters, and people in the DOJ with Lynch and other people. But Obama has managed to stay pretty much in the background, and no one's really specifically named him. So when he says that someone nobody ever thought possible, it could be Hillary, because no one is still, even though she paid for the dossier, no one suggested that she was the driving force behind this. So it could also be Hillary, because I believe she was the driving force behind all of this. And of course, Obama was involved in this in a major way as an active player. He wasn't just sitting in the White House being told about these things or having some curiosity. No, he was running the show in the White House, along with the Right Reverend Clinton and some very other corrupt people. So yes, it was a very interesting interview, and I think we can take that as a very good sign that Trump has every intention, some way. I don't know how. I don't know what the plan is. I don't claim to know what the plan is. I really don't know. But I do know this. He was speaking in a very matter-of-fact way with Judge Jeanine. And what I get out of it is what a lot of other people are getting out of it. He didn't mince any words here. He was very direct, saying, we are going to learn a lot of things. He says you're going to see how it all ends up, and that a lot of people that no one thought possible are going to be exposed. I think that tells us a lot. So, as we, of course, are getting now into this second part of the Lisa Page testimony that was leaked. Now, this was leaked to Jeff Carlson. So, I don't think it's coming from the deep state. I don't think the deep state would leak to Jeff Carlson. And if Jeff Carlson was getting a leak from the deep state, I doubt that he would trust him, and he would probably tell us that the leak came from the deep state. So I think it's someone within the Freedom Caucus is leaking to Carlson. But the same type of stuff we saw, these same types of leaks coming out, they were being leaked to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. So we had this other leak to the New York Times. And of course we had the story that was leaked about Papadopoulos. And so if we just go back and look at the past year and a half or so regarding this investigation, because in the Lisa Page testimony that was leaked, she basically says that there was an investigation going on for obstruction on Trump before and after the Comey firing. But we learned from that testimony that was released that it was after the firing of James Comey is it when they really ramped things up. And so, two things here. Number one, we have to go back and look at the last timeline of events over the last year and a half. First, we were told, as a result of a leak to the New York Times, that it was the dossier was the reason to investigate Trump and his team. But then, when the dossier started losing all its credibility, then they came out and changed their tune, and they said, wait a minute, it actually was Papadopoulos and his meeting with Down the Hatch Downer in London. That was the reason that we launched the counterintelligence operation. But then, once it became revealed that there really wasn't much there, and that looked like it may have been a frame-up, and that Papadopoulos never said anything about stolen emails or hacked emails, nor did Downer, only that Papadopoulos told him that the Russians had some damaging information, never specifically said anything about emails, hacked or not. Then it rattled that whole narrative, so they had to go back in a way to the dossier and start rebuilding the credibility of the dossier. And that's the track they've been on for the past 6-8 months, is to say, oh, well, the dossier's never been proven untrue. Nothing in the dossier has been proven to be untrue yet. So they had to go back to the dossier and try to rebuild credibility into that. But then we get this information here, and so now it's given them a new twist. So now they're saying, well, it was Trump firing Comey who was catching on to him about his relationship with Trump or with Russia or whatever. It was his dealings with Russia and the fact that he fired Comey because Comey was starting to close in on him. So he fired Comey, and that therefore is obstruction, and that's why we launched the investigation. So now we went from the dossier to Papadopoulos, back to the dossier, but now we have a new reason, and that's firing Comey. But we've learned from Lisa Page that they were investigating Trump prior to the firing of James Comey. So that can't possibly be the reason for Operation Crossfire Hurricane. And especially because those of us who watch this channel and people who are in the know that the raw data, the intelligence information that the FBI was using was manufactured by the CIA, likely working with Confusion GPS, Christopher Steele, Nellie Orr, and these confidential informants and intelligence assets overseas, both in the UK and apparently in Australia. So you had all these intelligence spooks working on this, putting all this stuff together, then using Christopher Steele is the man at the laundromat in London, laundering the stuff created by the intel community to pump it back into the FBI through various directions. Plus, we know it was being pumped directly into the FBI through Confusion GPS, from Nellie Orr to Bruce Orr, from this lawyer at Perkins Coie. So it was being pumped into the FBI from multiple directions through John Kerry, through Victoria Nuland at the EU, the whole 9 yards. So here we can see that they're almost like schizophrenic. And to this day, Devin Nunes says that there is no intelligence that was used to justify the investigation into Trump. He's seen the intelligence information, and he says it's not there. Even though John Brennan said that he knows that it was intelligence provided by him that helped launch the Trump-Russia investigation. Yet when Nunes goes looking for it, he can't find it. You see what I mean? It's like schizophrenia. They don't really have a real reason why they launched this counterintelligence operation. They don't have a reason. So they lurch for anything they can until that gets blown up, and then they move to something else. And then they move back to where they started. Then they go for something else. And they keep trying to basically cover what they did. They can't really decide because there was nothing official or nothing reliable that would have justified launching the investigation. And they know it. And Andy McCarthy was on Fox News and was talking about this, and he I like the way that he worded a comment that he made. He said, you know, what it looks like to him, and he's been watching it very closely. Solomon says what it looks like to him is that they had been running this sort of counter-intel investigation or an intelligence operation against Trump since as early as maybe the fall of 2015 is maybe when it began. Certainly it began in earnest, for sure, in late March, early April of 2016 with the 6-agency task force set up by John Brennan. But what McCarthy is saying is that, you know, what the Comey firing did was, he said, it gave them a reason to justify the investigations that they had been doing into Trump and his team, that it justified what they had been doing before that. So the Comey firing happens, and I go, great, this is what we needed to justify all the things we've been doing. Now we have a reason for all the stuff we've been doing. So now we've just covered our ass by using the Comey firing for all the things that we've been doing at this point. And moving forward, we now have a reason to do all these other things. That's the point Andy McCarthy made, and I think it's a very good one. We also have to remember the statement of John Ratcliffe and the statement that he made on Maria Bartiromo. And he was on Maria Bartiromo to comment on the leak of the questioning that he did of General Counsel, FBI General Counsel James Baker. If you remember, right after that, there was some leaked transcripts. Now, this was definitely deep state, because the transcripts that were leaked were only just a few specific transcripts, and they were things that would help the deep state case. They weren't the totality of things that were learned by John Ratcliffe. But once John Ratcliffe came on Maria Bartiromo, he made it perfectly clear that, yeah, those things that were leaked in the New York Times are there. They were questions I asked or other people asked, but there was other things that were far more important and far more telling that were not leaked. So they were very specific and targeted things that were leaked. So if you remember, what we learned from Ratcliffe is that Ratcliffe's statement about what he learned from James Baker says Ratcliffe learned that the FBI had secretly debated Trump's motivation to fire Comey, which ultimately led to a counterintelligence probe into whether Trump was working on behalf or with the Russians. So clearly that's something that Ratcliffe learned, was that the FBI, again, just like what Andy McCarthy said, was looking at the firing of James Comey and realizing that that was something they could use. Something they could use to justify what they had been doing and what they were now going to really start doing, and they were going to ramp it up. We also know that Rodenstein wrote the memo recommending Trump fire Comey. And we know that Rodenstein is up to his eyeballs in this whole thing. Is it possible that Rodenstein was involved in these discussions that Ratcliffe is talking about, and that Rodenstein may have said to McCabe or Strzok or one of those people, hey, you know, what we need is a reason to justify what we've all been doing, which is illegal, and what we want to do, which is definitely illegal. What we need is a reason. What if I write a memo telling Trump that he should fire Comey? We know he wants to. He's just needing someone to help give him that little push. How about if I write the memo to get rid of Comey? To tell Trump to get rid of Comey. And then Rodenstein writes the memo knowing Trump will follow it. And once he does, he's just done the very thing that they needed him to do to justify all the things that they had been doing that were illegal and the things that they wanted to do that would certainly be illegal. Remember, Comey said in his testimony, and he continues to say to this day, that he had never seen proof that Trump colluded with Russia. He's never seen that proof. The dossier was unverified and salacious, is what he told the committee hearing. To this day, he said it's never really been verified. But he's also quick to point out that it's never been proven false either, even though we know a lot of it has been. And of course, what I just mentioned was that this testimony from Baker, General Counsel Baker, FBI General Counsel, was selectively leaked to the New York Times, according to Ratcliffe. In other words, Ratcliffe was saying to Maria Bartiromo, you know, because we get these leaks all the time, but what he was saying is, you know, it's interesting what was leaked. They didn't leak the entire testimony or all the questions that I ask or other people ask that had real information that would really have shown, put a different light on things or a different spin on things. What they did is they released certain specific things that Baker said, and they released those things which would essentially help the case of the deep state. Because if you remember, right after the Baker interviews, and there was 2 interview sessions, after the first one, they came out and said, wow, he's the best witness yet. I mean, man, they were talking about how much they learned from him and how much information he had given them and how he was singing like a bird and giving us all this information. So at that point, it probably scared the deep state, someone at the DOJ, the FBI, and they decided that they had to counter that and stop that momentum that was building by releasing some selected things that he said to try to reshape or reframe the argument and the what the story was on the particular day or 2 after his interviews. So some more from the Lisa Page testimony is she is asked in her testimony about this Operation Dragon and the term Dragon FISA. And when she was asked about that, at that time, the lawyers who were from the DOJ, who were there with Page, told her that she could not comment on that. She could not comment on Dragon or the Dragon FISA. But she did say, Lisa Page did say that they, meaning the FBI and the people she was working with at the FBI, thought that it was a joke. So whatever operation this Dragon was, and whoever was the target of the Dragon FISA, they thought it was a joke. That leads me to believe that it was on Trump himself, or maybe Jared or Don Jr. Someone is either Trump or someone very, very close to him who wasn't already under FISA in investigation. So you can rule out Manafort, Carter Page, Papadopoulos, Roger Stone. All these guys were already been FISA'd, had already been surveilled, had already been targeted by informants, confidential informants, or agent provocateurs. At this time, if you look at what time this was, in the summer of 2016, they most certainly should have been talking about, could have only have been Trump. I mean, he was the target, right, of the whole thing. He was the end target, not Manafort. Manafort, Page, Papadopoulos, these were all just the characters that you need to get to Trump. So And based on Page's response that they thought it was a joke, it would tell me that it was someone that they thought, this is crazy. You can't really be serious that, you want to try to get, fires on this particular person based on what we have here. So I think that tells me that it was probably Trump. And if not Trump, certainly someone very, very close to him, as in like family, as in Trump Jr. or his son-in-law, Kushner. And of course, if you remember, John Solomon first revealed these 4 other intelligence operations or counterintelligence operations or criminal investigations, whatever you want to call them. But these other operations were first revealed by John Solomon back in the summer of 2018, when John Solomon wrote a story and he said, hey, there were 4 other investigations besides Operation Crossfire Hurricane. That was just one. There's at least 4 more that we know of. And he identified one of them as Dragon. And we never have learned what Dragon is. But we know at the time that Lisa Page and Peter's been stroking us discussed Dragon. First, we remember that Strzok made a comment about, hey, that's a really cool name, that you came up with. So apparently it was Lisa Page came up with it. And then it was at that same time that we had a flurry of activity within the same day or two of that conversation about Operation Dragon that Strzok and Page had a series of texts where they were talking about trying to get McCabe to have a DOJ official, they didn't name him, just a DOJ official, approve of the Dragon FISA. They wanted someone to approve of the Dragon FISA. And we don't know if that ever happened, but it probably did. It was probably Trump. We also should keep in mind another thing that comes back, and this is kind of on a different topic, getting on a different topic here about the Rotten Reverend Clinton and how they handled the email investigation. Remember that McCabe said under oath to the Joint House Committee that, quote, he could not think of, he said, I could not think of no other instances in which the FBI let somebody off the hook prior to the conclusion of an investigation except for Hillary Clinton. McCabe told Congress that he could not remember any other time as an FBI agent where the FBI let somebody off the hook completely prior to the conclusion of their investigation, except for in the case of Hillary Clinton. A lot going on here. And of course, with the last couple minutes I have left, I should point out to you that on Thursday morning, Pelosi, as I've been saying the last couple of days, the Democrats are cracking. There are Democrats on the wall issue who are now in difficult situations because of where they are in the country, are saying, hey, I'm good with the wall. I think we could use a wall. We could some wall here, some wall there, whatever. So we see this cracking taking place. So Thursday morning, Nancy Pelosi is giving a press conference. And essentially, she went on a diatribe, about a 2-paragraph long diatribe. When you essentially sort out the meaning of the things that she said in her 2-paragraph long diatribe, which was written out for her, basically what she was saying is that illegals killing Americans is not a justification for stricter border security rules. And that would probably include not just rules, but laws, and also more equipment, personnel, and things and such, like a wall. So she basically said that illegals killing Americans is not a good justification for building a wall or doing anything about border security. This is a very, very troubling statement, and it's one that's going to really throw a further wrench into the spokes and really come back to bite her in the ass as this thing moves forward, and it is moving forward. And Trump needs to stick to his guns because the Democrats are cracking on the issue. Another week or two, and the pressure may finally get to them. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.